Right now, many of us are feeling tense, and honestly, it makes sense. With the news around the world and all these uncertain headlines, the mind keeps checking updates, the body feels restless, and it becomes hard to focus even when you're safe at home. And many of us keep thinking about what we should do next. Should we change plans? Should we travel? Should we prepare for something? Even when there is still no real clarity. If you're feeling that way, you're not alone. And here's the surprising part, often it's not the danger itself that keeps anxiety going, it's uncertainty, not knowing what might happen next. Research published in 2024 in the European Journal of Investigation in Health, Psychology and Education by Regnoli and colleagues looked at how people respond psychologically during times of war and global conflict. What they found was interesting. Even people living far away from the conflict still reported higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. And the key factor wasn't only the idea of danger itself. What really seemed to drive distress was uncertainty about the future. Other recent research by Najem and colleagues has found a similar pattern. Fear of war tends to increase something called intolerance of uncertainty, the difficulty people experience when facing unpredictable situations. And this intolerance of uncertainty is strongly linked to anxiety, depression, and lower well being. And once uncertainty enters the mind, something interesting begins to happen inside the brain. Research examining intolerance of uncertainty has found that it can influence how we learn what is safe and what is dangerous. In a study published in 2015 in Biology of Mood and Anxiety Disorders, Morris and colleagues found that people who struggle more with uncertainty had more difficulty distinguishing between signals of threat and signals of safety. Normally, when something that once felt dangerous turns out to be safe, the brain gradually updates its response and learns that the situation is no longer a threat. But when intolerance of uncertainty is high, that learning process becomes slower. The brain remains more cautious. Even situations that are neutral or actually safe can still trigger a lingering sense of threat. So instead of the brain's alarm system switching off quickly, the brain stays more alert, continuing to scan the environment for possible danger. In other words, the mind is not reacting to danger itself, it is reacting to the absence of certainty. And until safety is clearly confirmed, the brain prefers to stay prepared. And this is where another important insight from neuroscience comes in. A review published in 2013 in Nature Reviews Neuroscience by Gruppe and Nitschke explains that anxiety is fundamentally a future-oriented emotion. In other words, anxiety is not only about reacting to danger that is happening right now, it is about anticipating possible danger that might happen in the future. Our minds constantly generate what-if scenarios. What if something goes wrong? What if something bad happens? These imagined possibilities can sometimes trigger more anxiety than the actual events themselves. So the brain is not just reacting to the present, it is constantly trying to predict the future. And when the future feels uncertain, those predictions can easily turn into worry. But here's the important part. The brain doesn't actually need the future to become completely certain in order to calm down. What helps the mind stabilize is something much simpler, bringing attention back to the present moment. Research on mindfulness shows that when people intentionally bring their attention to what is happening right now, their breathing, their surroundings, or the task in front of them, and observe the experience without immediately judging it, the mind becomes less trapped in cycles of worry and rumination. For example, a review published in Clinical Psychology Review by Kang and colleagues examined many studies on mindfulness and psychological health. Many forms of anxiety are driven by repetitive thinking about the future, imagining possibilities, predicting outcomes, and trying to control uncertainty. Mindfulness interrupts that cycle. It trains the mind to notice when attention has wandered into worry and then gently bring it back to the present moment. Over time, this simple skill strengthens attention, reduces rumination, and improves regulation of thoughts and emotions, changes that research links to lower levels of anxiety, depression, and psychological distress. And when the mind is no longer constantly caught in that loop of future prediction, the nervous system finally gets a signal that it can begin to settle. And this is where practical choices start to matter. When the future feels uncertain, the brain doesn't calm down by predicting everything that might happen. It calms down by focusing on what is still within your control right now, in the present moment. That might mean taking a break from constantly checking the news, returning to simple routines that give structure to your day. Your morning habits, preparing a meal, continuing with your usual responsibilities, moving your body, that is going for a walk, exercising, or simply stepping outside for fresh air, or bringing your attention back to the task in front of you, your work, your learning, the responsibilities that still matter today. These actions may seem small, but they give the brain something very important: signals of stability. They remind us that even if the world feels uncertain, not everything around us is unpredictable. And when the brain begins to detect these small pockets of stability, the alarm system slowly starts to quiet down. Because safety is not always something we find in the future. Sometimes it begins with how we ground ourselves right now. And maybe there is something we can learn from nature as well. Recently, I came across a beautiful idea inspired by the Ghaf tree in the UAE. In the UAE, the Ghaf tree is known for surviving some of the harshest desert conditions. It grows in the heat, drought, and shifting sands, not because the conditions around it are always stable, but because its roots grow deep enough to find water far below the surface. Even when storms pass through the desert, the Ghaf tree remains. In many ways, we can think about our own lives the same way. Uncertainty is part of being human. Periods of uncertainty will come and go, news cycles, crises, unexpected changes. But what keeps us steady is not trying to control every storm. It's strengthening our roots, continuing our work, continuing to learn, continuing to move toward the purpose that matters to us. Storms pass, but the roots we build every day remain. And when conditions become favorable again, the quiet work we did on ourselves during difficult times continues to compound, becoming part of the growth we carry forward.